Hi everyone, this is Professor Tejada, and I'm here for another read-along. In this read-along, we are looking at some of Chapter 1 from W.E. Du Bois's text. So let's get started. Chapter 1 is called Of Spiritual Strivings. There's a poem here by Arthur Symons. I googled him and found out that he is a Welsh poet. I'm going to go ahead and skip that part and get into Du Bois's writing. Okay, here we go. Between me and the other world, there is ever an unasked question. Unasked by some through feelings of delicacy, by others through the difficulty of rightly framing it. All nevertheless flutter round it. They approach me in a half-hesitant sort of way, eye me curiously or compassionately, and then, instead of saying directly, "How does it feel to be a problem?" they say, "I know an excellent colored man in town," or "I fought at Mechanicsville," or "Do not these Southern outrages make your blood boil?" At these I smile, or am interested, or reduce the boiling to a simmer, as the occasion may require. To the real question, how does it feel to be a problem, I answer seldom a word. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this question that's repeated. How does it feel to be a problem? And what Du Bois is referring to here is, how does it feel to be a black man in America at a time when slaves were newly freed? And he's saying that people don't know really how to ask him that question, and so they'll dance around it, or they'll ask an adjacent question, but he knows what they're really trying to ask. How does it feel to be black right now? Let's keep reading. And yet, being a problem is a strange experience, peculiar even for one who has never been anything else, save perhaps in babyhood and in Europe. It is in the early days of rollicking boyhood that the revelation first bursts upon one, all in a day, as it were. I remember well when the shadow swept across me. I was a little thing, away up in the hills of New England, where the dark Houstonic winds between Hoosac and Tagcanig to the sea. In a wee wooden schoolhouse, something put it into the boys' and girls' head to buy gorgeous visiting cards, 10 cents a package, and exchange. The exchange was merry, till one girl, a tall newcomer, refused my card, refused it peremptorily, with a glance. Then it dawned upon me with a certain sadness that I was different from the others, or like, mayhap, in heart and life and longing, but shut out from the world by a vast veil. I had thereafter no desire to tear down that veil, to creep through. I held all beyond it in common contempt, and lived above it in a region of blue sky and great wandering shadows. That sky was bluest when I could beat my mates at examination time, or beat them at a foot race, or even beat their stringy heads. Alas, with the years all this fine contempt began to fade, for the words I longed for, in all their dazzling opportunities, were theirs, not mine. But they should not keep these prizes, I said. Some, all, I would wrest from them. Just how I would do it I could never decide. By reading law, by healing the sick, by telling the wonderful tales that swam in my head? some way. Okay, let's pause there. So up here, when he's talking about these cards that he was going to exchange with his classmates, this is the first time that he realized he was different, when a classmate refused his card. As people of color or students of color, especially if we went to predominantly white schools, we may have this similar experience of realizing when we are different from the rest of the kids. And often it actually has to do with like school lunches. Lunch, food is very connected to our culture, right? So when I was in school and I was like in first grade, my mom would give me like leftovers from the Salvadoran dishes that she would make, which was really different from just like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that my classmates would have. And so just noticing the differences in foods around that, around lunchtime, I think is when I first started noticing that I was different from my classmates. So that's what's going on in that first part. He's noticing that he's different. In the second part, he's talking about outwitting or like beating his classmates. And he says he doesn't know how he's going to do it. He doesn't know if he's going to do it like physically, or is he going to become a doctor? Is he going to become a writer? Is he going to become a lawyer? He doesn't know, but what he does know is that he's going to excel. So we see a lot of confidence in DuBois and his intellectual capabilities, even as a young child. Okay, let's keep reading. With other black boys, the strife was not so fiercely sunny. Their youth shrunk into tasteless sycophancy, or into silent hatred of the pale world around them and mocking distrust of everything white, or wasted itself in a bitter cry, "Why did God make me an outcast and a stranger in my own house?" The shades of the prison house closed round about us all, walls straight and stubborn to the whitest, but relentlessly narrow, tall, and unscalable, to sons of night who must plod darkly on in resignation, or beat unveiling palms against the stone, or steadily, half hopelessly, watch the streak of blue above. I think here DuBois is talking about how black boys in that time, or black people in general, black kids, grew to mistrust their white counterparts. And some black people would turn that mistrust into hatred, and they would grow bitter. But it doesn't seem like that's what DuBois, it doesn't seem like he fell into that pit of despair. After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and the Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil. There's that word again, that phrase. And gifted with second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in an amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness. An American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals, and one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. I'd say this is one of DuBois's most well-recognized theories, this idea of double consciousness. If you, again, are a person of color in the U.S., or have an identity that is different from the one in the predominantly white, straight society, you can feel as if you are not American enough, or perhaps not, you may not be, Mexican enough, Salvadoran enough, brown enough, black enough, whatever it might be. And so there are these two warring identities that you have to reconcile within yourself. And there's so many authors who talk about this struggle with identity. And how do you bring those two into harmonious union? There's also this idea of trying to fit in to the mainstream American society, but also trying to preserve yourself, your culture, your home knowledge. And so that's what DuBois is talking about in this paragraph here. The history of the American Negro is the history of this strife, this longing to attain self-conscious manhood, to merge his double self into a better and truer self. In this merging, he wishes neither of the older selves to be lost. So he's really saying that he wants to be Black and American, and for those two identities to be whole and to be able to coexist in a harmonious sort of way. He would not Africanize America, for America has too much to teach the world and Africa. He would not bleach his Negro soul in a flood of white Americanism, for he knows that the Negro blood has a message for the world. He simply wishes to make it possible for a man to be both a Negro and an American, without being cursed and spit upon by his fellows, without having the doors of opportunity closed roughly in his face. I think that's a really powerful line. It might be my golden line. This idea of not Americanizing yourself, right? And of being able to be your true authentic self in this American landscape, but also not be misjudged, misunderstood by the white dominant group. And even though this was written during the Reconstruction era, a lot of these ideas, I know that we are still struggling with this in our society. I'm at my 15-minute mark, but I hope that that was helpful. You can feel free to message me if you have any questions about this particular reading or any of the readings for this week. And I'm looking forward to reading your short essays in discussion board number 2 this week. All right, I'll see you online.